Hello there, and welcome back to the Sleepy Ocean. Tonight, we are going to travel back through the currents of time, leaving the modern world behind to drift into an era known as the Miocene, a time when the oceans were warmer, the sea levels were higher, and the waters were ruled by a predator so immense that it defies our understanding of biology. We are here to swim in the shadow of the Megalodon, the largest shark to ever live. To understand this creature, we must first understand the world it inhabited roughly 20 million years ago. The geography of the Earth was different then. North and South America were not yet connected by the Isthmus of Panama, allowing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to mix freely in a massive, warm tropical current that encircled the globe. This supercurrent stabilized the planet's climate, creating vast, shallow seas teeming with life, from dugongs and sea turtles to a diverse explosion of new whale species. It was a golden age for the ocean, a time of plenty where the waters were thick with nutrients and energy, creating the perfect ecological stage for the evolution of a super predator that required an entire ecosystem of calories just to sustain its massive beating heart. The creature itself, scientifically named Otodus Megalodon, was not merely a larger version of the great white shark we know today, but a distinct lineage of mega-toothed sharks that diverged millions of years prior. While popular culture depicts them simply as scaled-up white sharks, paleontologists believe they were stockier, heavier, and far more muscular, built more like a steroid-enhanced bull shark than a sleek torpedo. Imagine a creature that could grow up to 50 or 60 feet in length, the size of 2 school buses parked bumper to bumper, and weigh as much as 50 tons. This is an animal so large that if it were to swim through a modern Olympic swimming pool, its nose would touch one wall, while its tail would still be thrashing against the other. Its sheer mass would displace so much water that its movement would create a pressure wave capable of knocking over smaller creatures without even touching them, a living submarine of cartilage and muscle patrolling the ancient blue. The most enduring legacy of the Megalodon, and the primary reason we know it existed at all, is its teeth. These fossilized remnants are the crown jewels of paleontology, often measuring over 7 inches in diagonal length, which is roughly the size of a human hand spread wide. Unlike the razor-thin teeth of some sharks designed for slicing, the Megalodon's tooth was a robust, thick, triangular wedge designed for crushing bone. The edges of the tooth are lined with fine, regular serrations, like a high-quality steak knife, which allowed the shark to saw through the thick blubber and muscle of whales. At the base of the tooth, between the enamel and the root, lies a chevron-shaped band called the bourlette, which is rarely seen in modern sharks. This bourlette acted as a shock absorber, helping to distribute the incredible stress of impact when the shark bit down on a struggling whale, ensuring that the tooth did not snap off in the heat of the hunt. For centuries, before humanity understood the concept of extinction or prehistoric life, these massive triangular teeth were found embedded in cliffs and washed up on beaches, sparking legends of dragons and serpents. In the Middle Ages, they were known as glossopetrae, or tongue stones, because people believed they were the petrified tongues of dragons, or giant snakes that had been turned to stone by saints. Pliny the Elder, the Roman naturalist, wrote about them falling from the sky during lunar eclipses. It wasn't until the 17th century that a Danish scientist named Nicholas Steno dissected the head of a massive shark caught by fishermen and realized that the tongue stones matched the shark's teeth perfectly. This discovery was one of the first steps in the founding of geology, proving that the rocks in the mountains were once parts of living animals in the sea, and that the Megalodon was not a myth, but a biological reality that had left its bite mark on history. The jaw that housed these teeth was a terrifying feat of biological engineering, capable of opening to a gape of roughly 9 or 10 feet high. A fully grown human could stand upright inside the open mouth of a megalodon with room to spare, and could likely walk down the throat without bending over. This massive trap was lined with multiple rows of teeth, numbering over 270 in total, arranged in a conveyor belt system. If a tooth was lost or broken during a violent encounter, a new one would rotate forward from the gums to take its place within days. This ensured that the predator was never unarmed. The jaw was not attached to the skull as rigidly as a mammal's. It could protrude forward, extending away from the head to grab prey, turning the mouth into a grasping tool that could latch onto the rounded flank of a whale with inescapable leverage. The bite force generated by these jaws is estimated to be the strongest of any animal in the history of the planet, far surpassing the Tyrannosaurus rex. Computer models based on the shark's skeletal structure suggest that a megalodon could bite down with a force of between 24,000 and 40,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, a human bites with about 160 psi, and a lion with about 650 psi. This immense power means the megalodon did not just bite flesh, it crushed bone. It could pulverize the ribcage of a whale, shattering the protective bones to reach the heart and lungs effectively instantly. This bite force suggests that the megalodon was not a scavenger or a timid hunter, but an active killer of large prey, capable of immobilizing animals nearly its own size with a single, catastrophic crunch. Despite its massive size, we have very few fossils of the megalodon's body because, like all sharks, its skeleton was made of cartilage, not bone. Cartilage is the same flexible material that makes up your nose and ears. It is lighter and more elastic than bone, allowing the shark to stay buoyant and turn tightly in the water. However, cartilage does not fossilize well. It decomposes rapidly after death. This is why we don't have a complete museum skeleton of a megalodon, in the same way we do for a T-Rex. Most of what we know about its body shape comes from inferring details based on its teeth and comparing them to modern sharks. This lack of evidence adds to the creature's mystique, leaving it as a ghost in the fossil record, a phantom giant whose true outline is drawn in the imagination of scientists using only the hard, calcified clues it left behind. The only parts of the megalodon's skeleton that regularly fossilized besides the teeth are the centra, the disc-shaped vertebrae of the spine. As the shark aged, calcium salts were deposited into the cartilage of its spinal column to strengthen it, creating hard, puck-like structures that could survive the ages. These fossilized vertebrae can be the size of a dinner plate, sometimes 6 inches across or more. By stringing these vertebrae together, scientists can estimate the length of the shark. A particularly famous vertebral column found in Belgium consisted of 150 vertebrae, suggesting a colossal animal. These spinal discs reveal that the megalodon had a stiff, powerful body designed for bursts of speed, with a thick, muscular torso that tapered down to a massive, crescent-shaped tail, capable of propelling 50 tons of predator through the water with effortless power. Inside these fossilized vertebrae, hidden from the naked eye, lies the record of the shark's life in the form of growth rings, similar to the rings of a tree. By slicing the vertebrae and examining them under a microscope, researchers can count the bands of seasonal growth to determine the shark's age. These studies have revealed that the megalodon was a long-lived species, with some individuals estimated to be over 80 or even 100 years old. This slow growth rate suggests that the megalodon spent decades as a teenager, slowly accumulating mass and learning to hunt larger and larger prey. It implies a life history of patience and endurance, patrolling the oceans for nearly a century. witnessing the changing of the epochs through eyes that had seen more seasons than almost any other creature in the deep. The ocean of the Megalodon was a dangerous place, not just because of the shark itself, but because of what it ate. The Megalodon was a specialized hunter of whales. During the Miocene, there was a massive diversification of small to medium-sized baleen whales, known as cetothares. These primitive whales were smaller than modern humpbacks, perhaps only 15 to 20 feet long, making them the perfect bite-sized snacks for a megalodon. Fossil evidence shows whale bones with deep gashes and scratches that perfectly match the serrations of megalodon teeth. Some whale vertebrae have been found with the tips of megalodon teeth snapped off and embedded in the bone, healed over by time, proving that the whales sometimes escaped and lived to carry the scars of their encounter with the Leviathan, swimming for years with a stone splinter of the apex predator lodged in their spine. The hunting strategy of the Megalodon was fundamentally different from the great white shark of today. While great whites tend to attack from below, targeting the soft underbelly to cause massive blood loss, the Megalodon was a brute force tactician. Fossilized whale skeletons suggest that the Megalodon often targeted the hard, bony structures of its prey. It would ram the whale with its massive snout to stun it, then bite directly into the chest cavity to crush the ribs and rupture the heart and lungs. Alternatively, it would target the propulsion system. Many fossil whale tails have been found with bite marks, suggesting the Megalodon would shear off the tail flukes or pectoral fins to immobilize the whale, leaving it helpless in the water before delivering the final blow. This was a predator that didn't just wound, it dismantled its prey with the precision of a butcher and the power of a hydraulic press. This reliance on whales meant that the Megalodon was a cosmopolitan species, found in every ocean on Earth, except for the freezing waters around the poles. Fossils have been excavated in North and South America, Europe, Africa, Japan, and Australia. This global distribution means that the Megalodon was the master of the world's waterways, traveling along the coastlines and crossing the deep ocean basins. It likely followed the migration routes of the ancient whales, moving from breeding grounds to feeding grounds in an endless cycle. The world of 15 million years ago was a small place for a megalodon. Essentially, one giant hunting ground where the sun never set on its dominion, and every warm current was a potential highway for the giant. To support such a massive body and active lifestyle, the megalodon likely had a form of warm-bloodedness known as regional endothermy or mesothermy. Most fish are cold-blooded, taking on the temperature of the water around them. But an animal as large and active as the megalodon could not afford to be sluggish. Like the modern great white and tuna, the megalodon likely had a specialized system of blood vessels called the rete mirabile, or wonderful net. This system captures the heat generated by working muscles and uses it to warm the cold blood coming from the gills. This allowed the megalodon to keep its stomach, brain, and eyes warmer than the surrounding water. A warm stomach digests food faster, allowing for rapid energy recovery, and warm eyes process visual information quicker, giving the predator a split-second advantage when tracking a fleeing whale through the murky depths. However, being warm-blooded came with a heavy metabolic cost. The megalodon had to eat constantly. Scientists estimate that an adult megalodon would need to consume over 2,500 pounds of food every day just to stay alive. That is the equivalent of eating a walrus or a large dolphin every single morning. This high caloric demand bound the megalodon to areas with high prey density. It could not survive in the biological deserts of the open ocean for long. It needed the nutrient-rich coastlines where whales congregated. This hunger was its engine, driving it to patrol tirelessly, a biological furnace that required a constant intake of blubber and oil to keep its massive fires burning. Because of their immense size, adult megalodons would have avoided shallow water to prevent running aground. but they needed safe places to give birth. Paleontologists have identified several ancient nursery sites, such as the Gatun Formation in Panama and the Bone Valley region in Florida. In these areas, we find high concentrations of juvenile megalodon teeth, only an inch or two long, but very few adult teeth. These nurseries were likely shallow, warm, food-rich bays protected from the open ocean. Here, the mother megalodon would drop her pups, leaving them to fend for themselves in a shark-eat-shark world. These shallow waters provided safety from other massive predators of the time, allowing the young kings to grow large enough to eventually venture out into the deep blue and claim their throne. The birth of a megalodon was likely a violent affair that began even before the pup left the mother's body. Like modern lamniform sharks, the order that includes great whites and mycos, the megalodon almost certainly practiced oophagy, or intrauterine cannibalism. The mother would produce many eggs, but the first pup to hatch inside the womb would not wait to be born. It would swim around inside the uterus and eat its unhatched siblings and any unfertilized eggs the mother continued to produce. This grim survival strategy ensured that only the strongest, most aggressive pup survived. As a result, when a baby megalodon was finally born, it was already a massive, fully formed predator, perhaps 6 or 7 feet long, born with a belly full of its brothers and sisters, ready to hunt from the very first second of its life. The sensory systems of the megalodon were tuned to detect the subtlest signals of life in the vast ocean. Like all sharks, it possessed a lateral line, a row of fluid-filled canals running down the side of its body that could detect vibrations and pressure changes in the water. It could feel a whale swimming miles away by the displacement of water its tail created. But its most exquisite sense was likely electroreception. The snout of the megalodon would have been covered in jelly-filled pores, called the ampullae of Lorenzini. These sensors can detect the faint electrical fields generated by the muscle contractions of other animals. Even if a whale was hiding silently behind a rock or buried in the sand, its beating heart would broadcast an electrical signal that the megalodon could pick up. It was a sixth sense that made true hiding impossible. To the megalodon, the ocean was alive with the electrical hum of prey. While the great white shark is often called the closest living relative of the megalodon, modern science has shifted this view. We now believe they are more like distant cousins. The great white evolved from a lineage of broad-toothed mako sharks, while the megalodon was the last and greatest of the Otodontidae family. They likely coexisted for millions of years. In fact, there is evidence that the ancestors of the great white may have competed with juvenile megalodons for food. The great white was the sleek, agile sports car to the megalodon's heavy-duty tank. While they shared the same shape and habits, they belonged to different dynasties, and when the megalodon finally vanished, the great white was left as the sole inheritor of the apex predator niche, a smaller echo of the giant that once ruled. The speed of the megalodon is a subject of debate, but its anatomy suggests it was built for cruising efficiency rather than constant high-speed chases. Its massive pectoral fins, the wings on its sides, would have been enormous, acting as hydrofoils to generate lift. This allowed the heavy shark to glide through the water with minimal effort, soaring like an underwater albatross. However, its tail, or caudal fin, was likely built for explosive power. When it decided to attack, it could unleash a burst of speed, accelerating from a slow cruise to a terrifying sprint in seconds. This ambush speed was critical. It didn't need to be faster than a whale over a long distance. It just needed to be faster for the last 10 seconds, closing the gap before the prey could react to the shadow rising from the deep. The color of the megalodon is unknown, as skin does not fossilize, but logic dictates it followed the laws of aquatic camouflage, known as countershading. To be invisible to prey, a marine predator must be dark on top and light on the bottom. If a whale looked down, the dark grey or brown back of the Megalodon would blend with the dark depths of the abyss. If a prey animal looked up, the white belly of the shark would blend with the bright, sunlit surface of the water. This optical illusion allowed the massive shark to drift unnoticed in the open water, a cloak of invisibility woven from light and shadow that allowed a 50-ton monster to vanish in plain sight until the jaws were already open. The cooling of the Earth's climate roughly 3 million years ago marked the beginning of the end for this colossal predator, a slow-motion catastrophe driven by the shifting of continents. As the tectonic plates drifted, the Isthmus of Panama slowly rose from the sea, joining North and South America, and physically cutting off the flow of water between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This geological barrier severed the ancient supercurrent that had kept the global oceans warm and stable for millions of years. Without this circulation, the poles began to freeze, locking up the world's water in expanding ice caps and lowering sea levels globally. The warm, shallow inland seas that the Megalodon used as nurseries and feeding grounds began to drain away, turning into dry land. The ocean temperatures plummeted, creating invisible thermal walls that the cold, sensitive Megalodon could not cross. The tropical world it had ruled for 20 million years was shrinking day by day, trapping the giant in a narrowing band of warm water near the equator, while the rest of the planet turned into a freezing, inhospitable wilderness. This climatic shift triggered a disastrous migration of the Megalodon's primary food source, the baleen whales. As the polar ice caps grew, the nutrient-rich cold waters around the Arctic and Antarctic exploded with krill and plankton. The whales, adaptable and insulated by evolving layers of thick blubber, began to migrate into these frigid waters to feast. They learned to feed at the poles and breed in the tropics, establishing the long-distance migration routes we see today. The Megalodon, however, could not follow them. Despite its ability to retain some body heat, it was not a true endotherm like a whale. It could not survive in the freezing polar seas. It was forced to stay behind in the nutrient-poor warm waters, starving while its prey grew fat and abundant just beyond the invisible line of the temperature gradient. The giant shark became a prisoner of its own biology, watching the buffet swim away into the cold, where it dared not go. In this shrinking warm water world, the Megalodon faced a new and aggressive rival that rose from the lineage of the whales themselves, Leviathan melvillei. Named after the biblical monster and the author of Moby Dick, this was a prehistoric sperm whale that rivaled the Megalodon in size and ferocity. Unlike modern sperm whales, which have teeth only on their lower jaws for sucking down squid, Leviathan possessed massive teeth on both its upper and lower jaws. These teeth were over a foot long, the largest functional teeth of any animal ever, and were thick and strong enough to crush bone. Leviathan occupied the same apex predator niche as the Megalodon, hunting the same medium-sized whales. It was a clash of titans, a mammal versus a fish, both armed with crushing jaws, fighting over a dwindling food supply. The presence of this intelligent, social, and heavily armed whale meant that the Megalodon was no longer the undisputed king, but a combatant in a war for calories that it was slowly losing. The fossilized waste of the Megalodon, known scientifically as coprolites, offers a rare and intimate glimpse into the internal workings of this vanished giant. Fossilized shark poop is distinct because of its spiral shape, which looks like a corkscrew or a twisted drill bit turned to stone. This shape reveals the anatomy of the isca, Megalodon's intestine. Unlike the long, winding intestines of mammals, sharks possess a spiral valve intestine. Inside a relatively short tube, the tissue is twisted into a complex spiral staircase. This design vastly increases the internal surface area for nutrient absorption without taking up much space in the body, allowing the shark to have a compact torso packed with massive liver and muscle. Finding a coprolite the size of a turkey suggests a digestive system that was efficient and slow, wringing every possible calorie out of the massive chunks of blubber and bone that the animal swallowed, a necessity for a creature with such a high metabolic cost. Covering the entirety of the Megalodon's massive body was a suit of armor made of millions of microscopic teeth called dermal denticles. If you were to touch the skin of a living Megalodon, it would feel like coarse sandpaper if you brushed it one way, and smooth as silk if you brushed it the other. These denticles are not scales like those of a salmon. They are structurally identical to teeth, with a hard enamel outer layer, a dentin core, and a central pulp cavity. They served two vital purposes. First, they protected the shark from injury, acting as a flexible chainmail that was tough enough to deflect the scrapes of struggling prey or the bites of rivals. Second, they were hydrodynamic marvels. The denticles were shaped with tiny ridges that channeled water flow, reducing drag and turbulence. This allowed the 50-ton animal to slip through the water with ghostly silence and surprising efficiency, minimizing the energy required to move its bulk through the dense ocean. The eyes of the Megalodon were likely tuned to hunt in the twilight zone of the ocean, utilizing a biological reflector known as the tapetum lucidum. This structure, found in modern sharks and cats, is a layer of mirrored crystals located behind the retina. When light enters the eye, it passes through the retina. If it misses the photoreceptor cells, it hits the tapetum and bounces back through the retina for a second chance to be detected. This effectively doubles the sensitivity of the eye in low light. For a predator patrolling the murky waters of a coastal estuary or the deep gloom of the open ocean at dusk, this meant the difference between blindness and sight. The Megalodon could likely see the faint silhouette of a whale swimming above it against the starlight, its eyes glowing with a ghostly metallic sheen in the darkness as they gathered the faintest photons of the ancient night. The sense of smell in the Megalodon was not just a passive ability, but a directional navigation system achieved through nostrils that were spaced far apart on its broad snout. This physical separation allowed for stereo olfaction. If a scent plume from a wounded whale drifted through the water, it would hit one nostril slightly before the other, or be slightly stronger on one side. The shark's brain would analyze this micro difference in timing and intensity to pinpoint the exact direction of the source. It could track a scent trail that was miles long and hours old, following the invisible chemical highway through the chaotic currents of the ocean. This olfactory radar was so sensitive that it could likely detect a single drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool of water, turning the vast, empty ocean into a map of potential meals. The evolution of the Megalodon was the culmination of a megatooth lineage that began over 60 million years ago with a shark called Otodus obliquus. This ancestor lived in the aftermath of the dinosaur extinction and was smaller, with smooth-edged teeth designed for catching fish. Over millions of years, as whales evolved and grew larger, the sharks evolved with them in an evolutionary arms race. Their teeth became broader, thicker, and developed serrations to saw through blubber. We can trace this lineage through the fossil record, seeing the teeth change shape in slow motion through the epochs, from Otodus obliquus to Carcharocles auriculatus, then Carcharocles angustidens, and finally, the perfect killing machine, Megalodon. It was a dynasty of predators that grew alongside the mammals, sharpening their weapons to match the size of their prey, until they reached a biological limit where physics simply would not allow them to get any larger. Within this species, there was likely a significant size difference between the sexes, a phenomenon known as sexual dimorphism. In modern sharks, females are almost always larger than males, and it is believed the Megalodon was no different. A female megalodon needed to be massive, not just to hunt, but to carry a litter of huge, developing pups. Being larger also allowed her to store more energy in her massive liver to sustain herself during pregnancy. This means that the terrifying 50-foot monsters we imagine were likely the mothers of the species. The males, while still huge, would have been the smaller, agile suitors who had to approach these giant females with extreme caution during mating, risking being eaten if the female was more hungry than amorous. The social life of the megalodon was likely one of profound solitude. As an apex predator with massive caloric needs, the ocean could not support large packs of them traveling together. They would simply eat the environment clean. They were likely solitary nomads, patrolling vast territories alone. However, there may have been exceptions. Like modern great whites, they might have tolerated each other's presence at the sight of a massive food source, such as a dead whale carcass. In these moments, a strict hierarchy based on size would have been enforced. The largest shark ate first, while the smaller ones circled and waited. These gatherings would have been tense, silent standoffs communicated through body language, a drop of the pectoral fins or a gaping of the jaw, to signal dominance without risking a fight that could be fatal for both giants. Even a creature as invincible as the megalodon was not immune to the microscopic world of parasites. Fossil evidence suggests that their bodies would have been ecosystems for smaller creatures. Copepods and leeches likely latched onto their fins and inside their gills, sucking blood and creating drag. Internal parasites, like tapeworms and roundworms, would have lived in their spiral valve intestines, stealing nutrients from their meals. The megalodon may have relied on symbiotic relationships with smaller fish, similar to the pilot fish or remoras seen on sharks today, to clean its skin. We can imagine the giant slowing down in a coral reef clearing, allowing a school of cleaner wrasse to pick the parasites from its teeth and skin. A moment of gentle vulnerability for a creature that was otherwise a swimming fortress. The extinction of the megalodon had a profound ripple effect that shaped the modern ocean, specifically allowing whales to grow to the gargantuan sizes we see today. For millions of years, the size of baleen whales was capped by the predation pressure of the megalodon. You could not get too big or too slow, or you would be eaten. But when the megalodon vanished around 3.6 million years ago, that pressure was lifted. Suddenly, being massive was a huge advantage. It allowed whales to retain heat in cold water and travel longer distances. Without the super predator to cull them, blue whales and fin whales evolved to become the giants of the modern era. In a way, the blue whale is the ghost of the megalodon's absence, a creature that was only allowed to exist because the monster that once hunted it finally faded into the dark. One of the most spectacular fossil sites that tells the story of the megalodon's world is the Pisco Formation in Peru. This desert landscape, which was once a shallow sea floor, is a graveyard of marine giants. Here, paleontologists have found the skeletons of ancient whales, dolphins, sea sloths, and the terrifying Leviathan. Embedded among these bones are countless megalodon teeth, and more importantly, whale bones with bite marks that match the teeth. It captures a frozen moment in time, an ecosystem of giants living and dying together. The dry wind of the Peruvian desert now blows over the sand where these titans once clashed, preserving the violence of the Miocene ocean in a silent, dusty library of bone. The healing ability of the megalodon was likely extraordinary, a trait shared by modern sharks who can recover from grievous wounds with little infection. We find fossilized vertebrae of megalodons that show signs of compression fractures or fusion, injuries likely caused by the immense physical stress of ramming prey. These bones show evidence of remodeling, meaning the shark broke its back or suffered massive trauma and continued to live, swim, and hunt for years afterward. Their immune system was likely robust, capable of fighting off the bacteria of the primordial ocean. This resilience allowed them to survive the violent lifestyle of an ambush predator, where slamming into a 20-ton whale at high speed was just another Tuesday lunch. The monster of the deep mythology often suggests that the Megalodon could still be alive today, hiding in the unexplored depths of the Mariana Trench. But biology tells us this is impossible. The Megalodon was a warm water animal, dependent on high-energy prey like whales. The deep ocean trenches are near freezing, high-pressure environments with very little food. A Megalodon swimming there would be like a Ferrari driving in a swamp. Its high metabolism engine would stall. It would freeze to death or starve. Furthermore, a predator of that size would leave traces, bite marks on deep-sea cables, massive sonar signatures, or physical remains washing ashore. The ocean is vast, but it is not quiet enough to hide a breeding population of 50-ton, whale-eating sharks. They are gone, leaving the deep trenches to the slow, cold, adapted ghosts, like the sleeper shark and the giant squid. The bite marks left by megalodons on whale ribs show signs of what scientists call failed predation, offering a glimpse into the struggles where the prey won. We have found fossilized whale ribs that were snapped in half by a massive bite, but then healed, forming a bony callus over the fracture. This proves that the megalodon did not always win. Sometimes the whale escaped. Perhaps it outmaneuvered the shark, or the shark broke a tooth and let go, or the whale's pod came to its defense. These healed bones are the medals of honor worn by ancient whales, proof that they survived an encounter with the most powerful jaws in history and lived long enough to heal, carrying the memory of the attack in their skeleton until the day they died. The nursery areas of the megalodon, such as the Bone Valley in Florida, reveal that the young sharks faced a perilous gauntlet of survival despite their genetic pedigree. A newborn megalodon was huge by modern standards, 6 feet long, but it was sharing the water with other terrors. These shallow seas were home to massive crocodiles like Theca, early great white sharks, and aggressive snaggle-toothed sharks called Hemipristis. The juvenile megalodon teeth found in these areas often show signs of being etched by stomach acid, implying they were eaten by other predators. The king of the ocean started life as a vulnerable prince, fighting for survival in a crowded, dangerous kiddie pool, where being the son of a giant was no guarantee of seeing adulthood. The extinction of the megalodon was likely a death by 1,000 cuts, rather than a single dramatic event. It wasn't just the cooling water or the disappearing whales, it was the collapse of the entire trophic cascade. The loss of shallow seaways meant a loss of habitat for the small whales. The small whales died out, replaced by larger, faster whales that migrated to the poles. The megalodon was left with nothing to eat but swift, agile prey that it couldn't catch, or massive prey that lived in water too cold for it to enter. Combined with competition from great whites eating their young, the population fragmented. They became isolated in pockets of warm water, suffering from inbreeding and starvation, until the last lonely giant swam its final patrol and sank to the bottom, ending a reign that had lasted 20 million years. The enamel of a megalodon tooth is made of a mineral called fluoroapatite, which is incredibly hard and chemically stable. This stability is why the teeth survived for millions of years while the rest of the shark dissolved. But the color of the fossilized teeth, often black, gray, or red, is not the original color. In life, the teeth would have been white, just like a modern shark's. The colors we see today are the result of minerals in the sediment, manganese, iron, or phosphate, leaching into the porous structure of the tooth over eons. A jet-black megalodon tooth tells us it lay in a noxic, muck-filled sediment. A red one tells us it rested in iron-rich sand. Each tooth is a geological chameleon, taking on the colors of the earth that embraced it after it fell from the mouth of the giant. The concept of shifting baselines in ecology helps us understand just how much the ocean has changed since the Megalodon vanished. We look at the ocean today with its great white sharks and orcas and think of it as a wilderness. But compared to the Miocene, our modern ocean is empty and tame. In the time of the Megalodon, the waters were crowded with multiple species of giant sharks, enormous raptorial sperm whales, marine sloths, and walrus whales. The energy flow of the ancient ocean was vastly higher, a hypercharged ecosystem capable of supporting monsters. The Megalodon was the capstone of a pyramid of life that was broader and taller than anything that exists today. We are swimming in the ruins of a much grander world, looking at the few remaining survivors and calling them giants, unaware of the titans that once shadowed the very same waters. Drifting alongside the whales of the Miocene were colonies of pinnipeds that bore little resemblance to the playful seals we know today, and these creatures, specifically the genus Alodesmus, formed a crucial, blubber-rich component of the Megalodon's diet. Alodesmus was a large sea lion-like animal that could weigh up to 600 pounds, possessing large eyes for deep diving, and a heavy, muscular body designed for the rough coastal waters of the ancient Pacific. We find the fossilized bones of these seals in the same sedimentary layers as Megalodon teeth, and the story they tell is one of violent interaction. Some Alodesmus bones have been discovered with the distinct serrated scrape marks of the giant shark's teeth, indicating that the Megalodon did not solely rely on whales, but was an opportunistic generalist that would target anything with a high fat content. The shark likely patrolled the edges of the kelp forests and the rocky rookeries where these seals congregated, using the murky water and the noise of the surf to mask its approach before launching a vertical strike that would engulf the seal before it could scramble onto the safety of the rocks. The fossil record of the Megalodon's teeth occasionally reveals a glimpse into the personal pain and physical trauma experienced by individual sharks through a phenomenon known as tooth pathology. While most teeth found are perfect triangles, a small percentage are deformed, twisted, or split down the middle. These deformities were not genetic. They were likely caused by injury to the jaw. If a Megalodon bit down on the hard, dense skull of a whale or the shell of a giant sea turtle and damaged the tooth-forming tissue within its gums, the subsequent teeth produced from that spot would grow in misshapen. We find teeth that are geminated or twin-tipped, and teeth that are wavy or curled. These fossilized deformities suggest that the life of a Megalodon was physically punishing. The act of subduing multi-ton prey involved tremendous impact forces that reverberated through the shark's jaw, occasionally crushing the delicate biological machinery responsible for maintaining its weaponry, forcing the shark to live with a permanent, jagged reminder of a hunt that went wrong. To maintain buoyancy without the aid of a gas-filled swim bladder, which bony fish possess, the Megalodon relied on a liver of gargantuan proportions. In modern lamniform sharks, the liver is the largest internal organ, sometimes accounting for up to 25% of the animal's total body weight. For a 50-ton Megalodon, this means its liver could have weighed over 12 tons, heavier than a school bus. This massive organ was filled with low-density oils, primarily squalene, which is lighter than water. This oil provided the static lift the shark needed to keep from sinking like a stone the moment it stopped swimming. The liver acted as a biological flotation device, a massive tank of lipids that occupied almost the entire length of the body cavity. This concentration of oil also made the Megalodon a high-value energy target for other predators or scavengers if it was injured or dying. A single bite into the flank of a Megalodon would release a cloud of rich, buoyant oil that would scent the water for miles. The swimming mechanics of the Megalodon were likely defined by a style known as thunniform locomotion, a method of movement shared by tuna and modern great white sharks. Unlike eels or smaller sharks that undulate their entire bodies in a serpentine motion, thunniform swimmers possess a stiff, rigid torso that minimizes drag. The propulsion comes almost entirely from the rapid, oscillating movement of the tail fin, or caudal fin. This tail was likely crescent-shaped and nearly symmetrical, possessing a high aspect ratio that allowed for maximum thrust with minimal water resistance. This design is built for cruising efficiency rather than maneuverability. It allowed the Megalodon to patrol vast stretches of the open ocean for days without fatigue, maintaining a steady, rhythmic cruising speed that allowed it to cover the distance between continents as it followed the seasonal migrations of the whales. Sharing the Miocene oceans with the Megalodon was a mysterious and formidable relative known as Paratodus benedeni, or the false mako. This shark is one of the rarest finds in the fossil record, but its teeth tell the story of a specialized hunter that lived in the Megalodon's shadow. The teeth of Paratodus are thick, curled, and hook-like, differing significantly from the serrated triangles of the Megalodon. While the Megalodon was the crusher, Paratodus was the grasper, likely using its hook teeth to snatch fast-moving, soft-bodied prey like squid or smaller open-ocean fish. The existence of this large shark, some estimates suggest it grew to over 20 feet, indicates that the ancient ocean was productive enough to support multiple species of giant sharks simultaneously. They likely occupied different ecological niches, passing each other in the blue, one hunting the giants of the surface, the other hunting the swift ghosts of the deep. The chemical analysis of oxygen isotopes found within the enamel of Megalodon teeth has provided the smoking gun for its warm-blooded capabilities. Oxygen-18 is a heavy isotope that is incorporated into the tooth structure as it forms. The ratio of oxygen-18 to oxygen-16 is dependent on the temperature of the body at the time of crystallization. By measuring this ratio in fossils and comparing it to the surrounding sediment and the teeth of known cold-blooded animals from the same era, scientists have determined that the Megalodon maintained a body temperature significantly higher than the surrounding seawater, perhaps as much as 13 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. This internal furnace allowed its muscles to fire more efficiently and its digestion to proceed rapidly, giving it the metabolic power of a mammal while retaining the sleek, hydrodynamic form of a fish. The Yorktown Formation, stretching across the coastal plains of Virginia and North Carolina, serves as one of the most vivid windows into the Pliocene world of the Megalodon. This geological layer was once a warm, shallow seafloor, teeming with life roughly 4 million years ago. Excavations here have revealed a dense, killing field, where Megalodon teeth are found in close association with the bones of the whale Cephiacatus and the walrus whale Ontocetus. The concentration of fossils suggests that this area was a feeding ground or a migration choke point. The teeth found here are often pristine, preserved in the soft, blue-gray clay that once formed the muddy bottom of the bay. Holding a tooth from the Yorktown Formation is holding a piece of a specific ancient ecosystem, a tangible remnant of a time when the main American coastline was a tropical hunting ground for the largest teeth in history. The feeding mechanics of the Megalodon were likely based on ram feeding rather than suction feeding. Many modern sharks, like nurse sharks, generate suction to pull prey into their mouths. But the Megalodon's jaw was too large and open to create an effective vacuum. Instead, it relied on the kinetic energy of its own mass. It would accelerate toward its prey with its mouth agape, ramming the water and the victim with the force of a freight train. the impact alone would have been devastating. The teeth were merely the follow-through. As the jaws clamped down, the shark would thrash its head from side to side, a behavior known as shaking, to use the serrations of its teeth like a saw. This sawing motion allowed it to shear off chunks of flesh that were far too large to be swallowed whole, carving the whale into manageable, bite-sized pieces of 400 or 500 pounds each. Ecological theory suggests that the juvenile megalodon likely practiced competitive exclusion against the ancestors of the great white shark. Because adult megalodons ate whales and juveniles ate fish and seals, a young megalodon occupied the exact same dietary niche as an adult great white. This direct competition meant that for millions of years, the great white shark could not grow larger or become dominant because the megalodon nurseries were already producing a superior, larger version of the same animal. The great white had to remain a scrappy underdog, surviving on the margins. It was only after the megalodon vanished that the great white was able to fully claim the title of the ocean's primary seal hunter, stepping into the shoes of the giant's children. The enameloid that covers the megalodon's tooth is a composite material that rivals the best human engineering. Unlike the enamel of human teeth, which is a disordered arrangement of minerals, shark enameloid is structured in a complex, triple-layered weave of fluorapatite crystallites. These crystals are arranged in bundles that run parallel to the stress lines of the tooth, preventing cracks from spreading. This microstructure is what kept the teeth sharp despite millions of years of erosion in the sand and sea. Even today, a fossilized megalodon tooth found on a beach can be sharp enough to draw blood if handled carelessly. The shark evolved a natural ceramic armor for its mouth that was virtually indestructible, ensuring that its primary tool never failed, even when crunching through the densest vertebrae of a whale. One of the specific prey items that sustained the megalodon in the southern hemisphere was a small baleen whale called Piscobalena nana. Fossils from the Pisco Formation in Peru show that this whale grew to only about 15 feet long, a perfect bite-sized morsel for a giant shark. Piscobalena was a slow swimmer, likely feeding on surface plankton. Its bones are frequently found with catastrophics, damage, crushed skulls, sheared ribs, and missing tails. The abundance of this specific whale species may have been one of the key factors allowing the megalodon to grow so large in the southern Pacific. The shark was farming a population of slow, fat, energy-rich mammals that had no defense against a predator of such scale other than to reproduce faster than they could be eaten. Before the megalodon reigned supreme, its lineage passed through a transitional species known as Carcharocles tubutensis. This shark lived during the Oligocene and early Miocene and represents the bridge between the earlier ancestors and the megalodon. Tubutensis teeth look very similar to megalodon teeth, but with one key difference: they possess small, distinct side cusps, or little hook-like bumps, at the base of the main triangular blade. As evolution progressed, and the sharks grew larger to hunt bigger whales, these side cusps disappeared, likely because a single, clean, serrated edge was more efficient for cutting through thick blubber than a tooth with jagged, catching edges at the base. The loss of these cusps marks the moment the lineage perfected its design, smoothing out the flaws to create the ultimate cutting implement. The sense of taste in sharks is highly developed, but it is not located on a tongue as it is in humans. Instead, sharks have taste buds lining their throats and the floor of their mouths. This anatomy suggests that the megalodon likely performed test bites. Before committing to a full-scale attack which would cost massive amounts of energy, the shark might have delivered a probing bite to sample the chemical composition of the prey. If the blubber content was too low, or if the animal was sick or unpalatable, the megalodon might have released it. This behavior is seen in modern great whites, which sometimes bite humans and then release them because we are too bony and lean. For a megalodon, a test bite would still be a fatal event for most creatures. A horrific sampling that left the victim with a missing limb or a crushed torso, even if the shark decided not to finish the meal. While the megalodon is celebrated as a hunter, it was undoubtedly also a colossal scavenger. In the ocean, a dead whale floats for weeks, turning into a massive, drifting island of fat and gas. For a creature with the caloric demands of a megalodon, passing up such a free meal would be evolutionary suicide. The scent of a rotting whale can travel for miles in the water. The megalodon would have been the first to arrive at these carcasses, using its size to bully away smaller sharks and claiming the prize. Its broad, robust teeth were perfectly suited for tearing into the tough, sun-baked skin of a floating carcass and cracking the bones to get at the marrow. In this way, the megalodon acted as the ocean's ultimate undertaker, ensuring that the energy from the largest deaths was recycled back into the apex of the food chain. The stomach of the megalodon, like that of modern sharks, likely possessed the ability to avert or turn itself inside out. This grotesque but hygienic maneuver allows a shark to rinse its stomach of indigestible debris like squid beaks, turtle shells, or large pieces of bone that sit in the gut. By relaxing the esophageal muscles and forcing the stomach out through the mouth, the shark can wash the organ in the flow of seawater before swallowing it back down. For a megalodon that regularly consumed the shattered skeletons of whales, this ability would have been essential to prevent blockages and infection. It suggests a life where the act of eating was so violent and all-consuming that the animal had to physically wash its own insides to prepare for the next feast. The extinction of the megalodon triggered a population explosion among the pinnipeds, the seals, and sea lions. For millions of years, their numbers were kept in check by the constant predation of the giant shark. When the shark vanished, the predation pressure on these animals dropped significantly. This allowed them to grow larger and populate new areas of the ocean. The elephant seals we see today, which can grow to massive sizes, may partly owe their existence to the absence of the megalodon. Without the 50-ton filter at the top of the food chain, the mid-sized mammals were free to expand, filling the oceans with the barking, blubbery colonies that now line the coasts of California and Antarctica. The sheer number of teeth a single megalodon produced in its lifetime is a staggering logistical feat. Modern sharks can lose and replace tens of thousands of teeth over their lifespan. If a megalodon lived for 100 years, shedding teeth every few weeks, a single individual could have produced over 40,000 teeth. This biological mass production explains why megalodon teeth are so relatively common in the fossil record compared to other dinosaur-era remnants. The shark was essentially seeding the ocean floor with durable, enamel-coated calling cards every day of its life. We are not finding a rare part of the animal. We are finding its trash, the discarded cutlery of a distinct geological appetite that paved the ancient seafloor with millions of serrated triangles. The gills of the megalodon would have been massive, vertical slits lining the side of its head, likely numbering 5 to 7 on each side. To supply oxygen to its massive, warm-blooded body, the megalodon had to be a ram ventilator. This means it could never stop swimming. It had to constantly force water into its mouth and out through its gills to maintain the flow of oxygen. If it stopped moving, it would suffocate. This creates the image of a creature condemned to eternal motion, a sleepless engine that had to keep prowling the blue void every second of every day for a century. The water passing over its gills would have needed to be oxygen-rich, further tethering it to the productive, churning currents of the ocean and keeping it away from the stagnant, dead zones that sometimes form in the deep. To protect its eyes during the violent thrashing of a whale hunt, the megalodon likely did not have eyelids in the traditional sense. Instead, it may have rolled its eyes backward into its skull, exposing the tough white sclera to the chaos. This ocular rotation is seen in great whites just before they strike. It turns the shark blind for the final split second of the attack, relying entirely on electroreception and instinct to land the bite. Alternatively, it may have possessed a nictitating membrane, a translucent third eyelid that slides across the eye for protection. Whichever mechanism it used, it shows that the Megalodon evolved to anticipate the desperate, flailing defense of its prey, armoring its most delicate sensory organs against the bone-shattering impact of the kill. Finally, we must consider the acoustic footprint of the Megalodon, the sound of its presence in the ancient sea. While sharks do not vocalize, they have no vocal cords to roar or sing. The movement of a 50-ton body through the water would not have been silent. The displacement of water, the low-frequency whoosh of its tail beat, and the crunch of cartilage would have created a distinct sonic signature. Whales, with their sensitive hearing, would have learned to recognize this sound. The approach of a Megalodon would have been felt as a pressure wave before it was seen, a heavy rhythmic disturbance in the hydroacoustic landscape. To the creatures of the Miocene, the silence of the ocean was broken by the heavy, thumping bass line of the giants swimming, a sound that signaled the arrival of the inevitable end. Floating through the nutrient-rich, greenish-brown waters of the ancient Salisbury embayment, which covered what is now the coast of Maryland and Virginia, we encounter a specific ecological theater where the drama of the Megalodon played out in the shallows. This region, immortalized in the geological layers of the Calvert Cliffs, was a bustling inland sea, a temperate nursery ground where the water was turbid with plankton and sediment runoff from the Appalachian Mountains. Here, the juvenile megalodons learned the art of the kill, not on giant whales, but on strange long-snouted dolphins known as Yorhinodelphis. These dolphins possessed needle-like beaks that made up nearly half their body length, looking like underwater swordfish. They were swift and agile, darting through the murky water to catch fish. For a young megalodon, perhaps only 10 or 12 feet long, catching a Yorhinodelphis was a masterclass in ambush. The shark had to learn to anticipate the dolphin's frantic turns, using the cloudy water to hide its massive bulk until the final second. The fossil record of the cliffs is littered with the vertebrae of these dolphins, often sheared in half by the clean, oblique bite of a shark that was just beginning to understand the terrifying potential of its own jaws. Sharing these perilous waters was a creature that looked like a biological mistake, the Odobenocatops, or the walrus whale. This bizarre animal was related to narwhals and belugas, but had evolved a face that only a bottom feeder could love. It possessed 2 tusks that grew downward, but in some males, one tusk was significantly longer than the other, extending backward along the body like a skewed lance. It swam with a slow, undulating motion, using its sensitive, whiskered lips to vacuum mollusks out of the muddy seabed. To a megalodon, the Odobenocatops was a defenseless, slow-moving target. It lacked the speed of a dolphin and the echolocation prowess of a sperm whale. Its only defense was its obscurity in the mud. However, once detected by the ampullae of Lorenzini of a patrolling shark, the walrus whale had no escape. Fossils show that the megalodon would attack from behind or below, crushing the fragile ribcage of this bottom dweller effortlessly, proving that in the Miocene ocean, eccentricity was no defense against raw power. The evolutionary journey of the megalodon's teeth involved a process of refinement known as the loss of lateral cusplets, a detail that helps paleontologists date the fossils with precision. The ancestors of the megalodon, such as Orthodus obliquus and Carcharocles auriculatus, possess teeth with a large central triangular blade flanked by 2 smaller, hook-like bumps on either side of the root. These side cusps were likely useful for grasping slippery fish, acting as extra barbs to prevent escape. But as the lineage shifted toward hunting large whales with thick layers of blubber and bone, these side cusps became obsolete. They created drag and friction during the bite. Over millions of years, evolution slowly smoothed them away. In the transitional species, Carcharocles tubutensis, the cusps are faint and vestigial. By the time Megalodon arrives, they are gone completely, leaving a clean, serrated edge from tip to root. This streamlining turned the tooth from a grasping fork into a pure cutting blade, optimizing the weapon for slicing through the dense, fibrous nature of whale flesh without getting snagged. The sheer height of the Megalodon's dorsal fin is a feature that commands its own respect, acting as a hydrodynamic keel for the massive animal. Based on the scaling of modern sharks, the dorsal fin of a fully grown Megalodon would have stood approximately 6 feet tall. To visualize this, imagine a tall human standing upright on the shark's back. The tip of the fin would still be above their head. This fin was not just for display, it was a critical stabilizer. Without it, the immense torque generated by the thrashing of the tail would have caused the shark's body to roll uncontrollably. The dorsal fin locked the shark in a vertical orientation, allowing it to slice through the water with precision. If a Megalodon were to breach the surface in the modern ocean, the fin alone would look like the sail of a small yacht cutting the water, a massive dark triangle, heralding the arrival of a submarine-sized predator beneath. The chemical composition of Megalodon teeth provides definitive proof of their diet through the analysis of calcium isotopes. Calcium comes in different atomic weights, and the ratio of calcium-42 to calcium-44 in an animal's bones and teeth changes depending on where it sits in the food chain. This is known as the trophic level. As you move up the food chain, from algae to krill, to fish, to seal, to shark, the lighter isotopes are filtered out, and the heavier isotopes accumulate. When scientists analyzed the enamel of Megalodon teeth, they found the highest concentration of heavy calcium isotopes ever recorded in a marine animal. This confirmed that the Megalodon was a hyper-apex predator sitting at the very pinnacle of the food web. It was not eating fish, it was eating animals that ate fish, or even animals that ate animals that ate fish. It occupied a trophic position so high that it has no modern equivalent, a king who fed exclusively on other kings. The rivalry between the Megalodon and the ancient sperm whale Zygophysita was a battle of heavyweights that likely shook the Miocene seas. Zygophysita, often called the killer sperm whale, was akin to a modern orca, but much larger and armed with teeth in both jaws. Unlike the modern sperm whale, which relies on suction, Zygophysita had a mouthful of conical, banana-sized teeth designed for tearing. It grew to around 20 feet long and traveled in pods. While a single Zygophysita was no match for an adult Megalodon, a pod of them was a different story. They likely mobbed the giant shark, using their echolocation to coordinate attacks and their massive heads to ram the shark's gills. This interspecies warfare meant that the Megalodon could not simply roam with impunity. It had to be wary of organized gangs of cetaceans that possessed the intelligence to turn the tables on the solitary hunter. The phenomenon of bioerosion on fossilized Megalodon teeth tells us what happened after the tooth fell from the mouth of the giant. Many teeth found on the ocean floor are riddled with tiny holes, tunnels, and etchings. These are not signs of decay, but of life. Once the tooth settled in the sediment, it became a hard substrate in a soft world. Sponges, worms, and clams bored into the enamel to make homes. Bryozoans encrusted the root. This colonization process, known as taphonomy, reveals how long the tooth sat exposed on the seafloor before being buried. A tooth covered in barnacles and boreholes tells us it lay in clear, calm water for years, acting as a miniature reef for the microscopic creatures of the ancient bottom, a discarded weapon repurposed as a home. The concept of gigantothermy is another theory used to explain the Megalodon's body temperature. differing slightly from the active blood pumping of mesothermy. Gigantothermy suggests that the megalodon was so incredibly large that it simply couldn't lose heat fast enough. Just as a large pot of soup stays hot longer than a small cup, the sheer volume of the megalodon's body mass trapped the heat generated by its metabolism. Its surface area to volume ratio was so low that the cold ocean water couldn't cool its core effectively. This passive form of warm-bloodedness meant that the shark was a walking, or swimming, thermal battery, immune to the immediate chill of deeper waters, allowing it to dive into the thermocline to hunt giant squid or deep-diving whales without its muscles seizing up from the cold. The specialized hunting grounds of the Pisco Formation in Peru reveal a stark and violent ecosystem where the megalodon hunted the strange aquatic sloth Thalassocnus. These sloths were semi-aquatic, living on the coast and diving into the water to graze on seagrass and algae. They had dense bones to help them sink, acting like biological dive weights. While they were adapted for the water, they were slow and clumsy swimmers compared to a shark. Fossil evidence from the region paints a grim picture. Sloth bones have been found with the distinct bite marks of sharks. For a megalodon patrolling the kelp beds of ancient Peru, a diving sloth was an easy, high-calorie snack, a slow-moving ball of fur and fat that had wandered into a realm where it did not belong. The extinction of the megalodon was not a singular event, but a pulsed decline that varied by region. It did not vanish from the entire world on a Tuesday afternoon. Instead, populations in the northern hemisphere likely collapsed first as the cooling trend severed their migration routes. The populations in the southern hemisphere may have held on longer, clinging to the remaining pockets of warm water. This fragmentation is a classic extinction vortex. As the populations became isolated from one another, genetic diversity plummeted. Inbreeding would have weakened the remaining sharks, making them susceptible to disease and environmental changes. The end of the megalodon was a slow, lonely fading out, as the lights of their empire were extinguished one by one across the globe until the ocean was finally quiet. The structure of the megalodon's root, the part of the tooth anchored in the jaw, was a marvel of leverage. In many teeth, the root is nearly twice the size of the enamel blade. It is shaped like a heavy, bilobed V. This massive root was necessary to anchor the tooth into the cartilaginous jaw against the unimaginable forces of the bite. When the shark bit into a whale and shook its head, the lateral forces on the tooth were immense. A smaller root would have caused the tooth to rip free from the gums immediately. The megalodon's root acted as a deep foundation, distributing the stress into the jaw and ensuring that the tooth held fast even when talking against the struggling mass of a 40-ton victim. The theory that the megalodon could hide in the Mariana Trench is biologically unsound due to the calcium compensation depth. In the deepest parts of the ocean, the immense pressure causes calcium carbonate to dissolve. Animals that live there, like snailfish, have very thin, flexible bones and almost no cartilage density. A massive, calcified skeleton, like the megalodon's, would be chemically expensive to maintain in such an environment. Furthermore, the food supply in the Hadal zone is practically non-existent for a megapredator. It relies on the marine snow of dead plankton. A 50-ton shark requires blubber, meat, and high-density calories. The deep trench is a desert to a megalodon, a cold, crushing void where it would starve to death long before it could find a mate. The snaggletooth shark, Hemiprista serra, was a common companion of the megalodon in the warm Miocene seas, and its presence helps paint the picture of the ecosystem. Hemipristis is still alive today, but is small and rare. In the time of the megalodon, however, it grew to nearly 20 feet long. Its teeth were distinctively serrated and curved, designed to snag soft prey. We find their teeth mixed in with megalodon fossils by the thousands, suggesting they were the hyenas of the sea. They likely followed the megalodon, scavenging on the leftovers of its kills. When the megalodon tore open a whale, the scent of blood would draw in the snaggletooths, who would dart in to strip the carcass of scraps, living in the dangerous shadow of the king to survive. The impact of the megalodon on the evolution of whale behavior is known as the fear landscape. Just as wolves change the way elk move through a forest, the presence of the megalodon changed how whales used the ocean. Ancient whales likely avoided deep, open water, where they were vulnerable to attack from below. They may have stuck to very shallow coastal shelves or complex reef systems where the giant shark could not maneuver. The migration to the polar feeding grounds may have originally started not just for food, but as a predator avoidance strategy. By moving into the freezing, ice-choked waters where the cold-sensitive shark could not follow, the whales found a sanctuary. The entire migration pattern of modern baleen whales may be a lingering behavioral scar, a habit formed to escape a monster that no longer exists. The cranial kinesis of the megalodon allowed it to consume prey larger than its own head. Sharks have a hyostylic jaw suspension, meaning the upper jaw is not fused to the skull, but is attached by flexible ligaments. This allows the jaw to swing forward and downward, detaching from the brain case to extend the reach of the bite. For the megalodon, this meant it could open its mouth to a grotesque degree, dropping the lower jaw and pushing the upper jaw forward to create a nearly flat, vertical wall of teeth. This maximized the surface area of the bite, allowing it to take a massive, semicircular chunk out of a whale's flank, bypassing the ribs to hit the vital organs in a single motion. The fossilized ribs of ancient whales often show a specific pattern of damage known as compression fractures. These are not cut marks from the teeth, but breaks caused by blunt force trauma. This supports the theory that the megalodon used its massive snout as a battering ram. By slamming into the side of a whale at high speed, the shark could stun the animal and break its ribs before ever opening its mouth. This tactic would have minimized the risk of injury to the shark's eyes and snout from the flailing flukes of the whale. It suggests a calculated violence, a 1-2 punch of physics and biology, where the shark used its mass as a weapon first and its teeth second. The nutrient cycle of the Miocene Ocean was likely driven by the megalodon pump, similar to the modern whale pump but more violent. By consuming massive amounts of blubber and meat at the surface and then excreting waste, the megalodon recycled nutrients like iron and nitrogen back into the photic zone. However, its predation also created whale falls on a massive scale. By killing whales and allowing parts of the carcasses to sink, the megalodon sent massive pulses of food to the deep sea floor. The extinction of the megalodon may have altered the food supply of the deep ocean, reducing the number of carcasses raining down into the abyss and changing the benthic ecosystems forever. The megalodon rose is a poetic term sometimes used by fossil hunters to describe a concretion of gypsum crystals that can form on teeth in clay sediment. In places like the Antwerp sands in Belgium, pyrite and gypsum in the soil react with the trace minerals in the tooth. Over millions of years, beautiful, flower-like crystals of selenite grow on the surface of the fossil. These delicate, glassy structures are a stark contrast to the brutal weapon they decorate. It is a reminder of the transformative power of deep time, turning a tool of slaughter into a base for delicate geological art, burying the violence of the past under a bloom of crystal. The terror of the Miocene was not limited to the water. The coastline itself was a dangerous interface. The fossil record shows that megalodons frequented estuaries and river mouths, likely to pup or hunt. This put them in proximity to terrestrial giants. We have found elephant-like, gomphotherian bones in marine deposits, suggesting they were occasionally washed out to sea or attacked while crossing river deltas. It is a terrifying image. A prehistoric elephant swimming across a bay, only to be pulled under by a 50-ton shark. The boundaries between the land and the sea were blurred by the appetite of a predator that regarded anything in the water as fair game. Finally, we must consider the functional extinction of the Megalodon, which occurred before its actual biological extinction. A species becomes functionally extinct when its population drops so low that it no longer plays a significant role in the ecosystem. This likely happened thousands of years before the last shark died. As their numbers dwindled, the predation pressure on whales vanished. The whales began to grow larger and multiply unchecked. The ocean ecosystem shifted into a new regime long before the final Megalodon took its last breath. The ghost of the Megalodon lingered as a rare, lonely wanderer, a dethroned king patrolling an ocean that had already moved on, ruled by the new giants of the mammalian order. Drifting through the submerged forests of the Miocene Amazon, which was then a massive inland sea connected to the Caribbean, the Megalodon encountered a reptilian rival that challenged its dominance in the brackish margins, the Purosaurus. This giant caiman grew to over 40 feet in length, a scaled leviathan with a bite force that rivaled and perhaps even exceeded that of the great shark. Fossil records show that their territories overlapped in the nutrient-rich, shallow waters of northern South America. While the Megalodon ruled the open blue and the deeper coastal shelves, Purosaurus was the king of the swamps and the flooded deltas. However, the interface between these two worlds, the estuaries where the river met the sea, was a dangerous no man's land. We can imagine the titanic clashes that may have occurred when a high tide brought a hunting Megalodon into the murky brown water of the Cayman's domain, a battle between the ultimate gill breather and the ultimate lung breather, fighting for the right to consume the dugongs and giant turtles that grazed on the seagrass beds of this lost, flooded continent. The anatomical structure of the Megalodon's pectoral fins suggests a specific swimming behavior known as dynamic lift that was essential for its survival. Unlike modern bony fish, which can hover in place using swim bladders, the Megalodon was negatively buoyant. If it stopped swimming, it sank. Its pectoral fins were massive, stiff wings, likely extending 10 feet or more from its body. To maintain its depth, the shark had to swim forward constantly, generating lift over these fins exactly like an airplane generates lift over its wings. This meant that the Megalodon was flying underwater. The angle of attack of these fins had to be adjusted constantly to compensate for the shark's changing weight as it consumed massive meals. A Megalodon with a stomach full of whale blubber would be significantly heavier and more buoyant depending on the fat content, requiring subtle, instinctual adjustments to the pitch of its fins to keep from drifting upward or sinking into the crushing dark. The sensory pores on the Megalodon's snout, the ampullae of Lorenzini, were filled with a specialized conductive jelly that was one of the most sensitive substances in the natural world. This jelly, a glycoprotein matrix, acted as a semiconductor, allowing the transfer of electrical charges from the seawater to the shark's nerves with almost zero resistance. This system was temperature dependent. As the water cooled, the sensitivity of the jelly changed. This thermal constraint may have been another factor locking the Megalodon into warm waters. In the freezing depths or the cooling poles, the jelly in its nose would become less viscous and less conductive, effectively blinding the shark's sixth sense. The cooling of the oceans didn't just freeze the shark's muscles. It may have dimmed its electrical sight, turning the high-definition world of the predator into a fuzzy, static-filled confusion. The Sharktooth Hill bone bed near Bakersfield, California, provides a terrestrial window into this oceanic past. Today, this site is a dusty, hot inland desert miles from the ocean. But 15 million years ago, it was the floor of the Temblor Sea, a calm, inland arm of the Pacific. It is one of the densest fossil sites on Earth. Here, the teeth of megalodons are found alongside the bones of seals, whales, sea turtles, and desmostilians, strange hippo-like creatures that are now extinct. The density of the fossils suggests that this was a slow deposition environment where animals died and sank over thousands of years, undisturbed by strong currents. It serves as a stark reminder of how the map of the world shifts. The hunting grounds of the greatest predator in history are now baking in the sun, covered in scrub brush and dust, the blue water replaced by a sea of dry silence. The relationship between the megalodon and the ancestors of the great white shark was not merely competitive, it was likely predatory. In the Pisco Formation of Peru, we find evidence of Carcharodon hastalis, the broad-toothed mako, which is the direct ancestor of the great white. These sharks were large, reaching 20 feet or more, but they were still dwarfed by the megalodon. It is highly probable that adult megalodons viewed these proto-great whites as food. This intra-guild predation, where top predators eat other predators, would have suppressed the population of the great white ancestors, keeping them smaller and forcing them into niches the giant refused to enter. The great white shark as we know it today is a survivor, a lineage that managed to dodge the jaws of the giant long enough to inherit the ocean when the king finally fell. The sheer volume of water displaced by a swimming megalodon created a pressure wake that prey could feel long before the visual sighting. In the ocean, water is incompressible. When a 50-ton object moves through it, it pushes a massive wave of pressure ahead of it. Sensitive animals like whales and seals would have felt this displacement as a physical shove or a sudden change in the water's texture. To mitigate this, the megalodon likely practiced stealth swimming when hunting, moving with slow, low-frequency tail beats to minimize the pressure wave, gliding on its momentum. It was a stalker that had to hide not just its visual presence, but its physical displacement, trying to act like a ghost when it weighed as much as a locomotive. The bite marks found on the skulls of small baleen whales suggest that the megalodon often employed a strategy of sensory deprivation. By targeting the head of the whale, the shark could crush the delicate echolocation organs and the eyes. A blind, deafened whale is helpless. It cannot navigate, it cannot communicate with its pod, and it cannot coordinate a defense. This brutal efficiency indicates a high level of intelligence. The megalodon understood the anatomy of its prey. It knew where the pilot lived. It did not simply bite randomly. It dismantled the command center of the victim first, ensuring that the struggle would be short and the outcome would be certain. The enamel of the megalodon teeth shows microscopic wear patterns that tell the story of what they ate. Under a scanning electron microscope, the surface of the tooth reveals tiny scratches and pits. Vertical scratches indicate a slicing motion through soft flesh, while irregular, deep pits indicate contact with bone. Many megalodon teeth show heavy pitting near the tip, confirming that they regularly crunch through hard material. But interestingly, some teeth show spalling, where flakes of enamel have popped off. This specific damage is caused by hitting something harder than bone, likely the teeth of another predator or the extremely dense ear bones of a whale. These microscopic scars are the forensic evidence of violent collisions that happened millions of years ago, preserved in the stone surface of the tooth. The metabolic rate of the megalodon required a conveyor belt of calories, and this need likely dictated the shark's migration speed. A study of the cruising speeds of large marine animals suggests that the megalodon's optimal cruising speed, the speed at which it burned the least energy per mile, was likely around 3 miles per hour. This is a slow, steady walking pace. However, because of its size, it could maintain this pace indefinitely. It would have moved through the ocean with a deceptive lethargy, a massive shadow drifting effortlessly across the continental shelves. This slow cruising allowed it to scan vast areas for the electromagnetic signatures of whales, while conserving the explosive energy it needed for the final few seconds of the attack. The extinction of the Megalodon allowed for the rise of the orca, or killer whale, but they did not overlap in a significant way. The modern orca, Orcinus orca, evolved relatively recently, appearing in its current form only within the last few 100,000 years, long after the Megalodon was gone. However, smaller, ancestral dolphins were present. The disappearance of the Megalodon left a vacuum at the top of the food chain, the macro-predatory niche. It took millions of years for the orca to evolve the size and pack-hunting strategies necessary to fill this void. In a sense, the orca is the successor to the throne, but it rules with a different style. Using intelligence and cooperation, where the Megalodon used sheer size and brute force. The myth of the Black Demon of Baja California, a local legend of a massive black shark, is often cited by cryptozoologists as evidence of surviving megalodons. But biologically, if a megalodon were to survive in the modern era, it would likely not be black. Deep-sea predators are often black or red to hide in the dark, but the megalodon was a surface hunter of the photic zone. It would have retained its counter-shading, grey or brown on top, white on the bottom. The persistence of these legends speaks more to the human psychological need for monsters than to biological reality. The ocean is vast and scary, and the idea that the king is still out there is a powerful primal fear that resonates with our own ancestral memories of being small, vulnerable creatures on a dangerous coast. The Pliocene marine megafauna extinction event was a global die-off that claimed not just the megalodon, but nearly 36% of all large marine species. It wasn't just the shark that died, it was the entire ecosystem that supported it. The marine sloths, the walrus whales, the small filter-feeding whales, they all vanished around the same time. This suggests a systemic collapse, likely driven by the changing climate and the loss of coastal habitats due to fluctuating sea levels. The megalodon was the most visible victim because of its size, but it was just one part of a collapsing web. Its death was the final toppling domino in a chain reaction that reshaped the biology of the Earth's oceans. The teeth of the megalodon have been found on every continent except Antarctica, but their condition varies wildly depending on the sediment. In the Cooper River of South Carolina, divers find teeth that are jet black and polished like glass by the running water. In the phosphate mines of Morocco, they are white and chalky, fragile to the touch. In the clay banks of Virginia, they are blue-gray and sharp as razors. This variety is due to the process of permineralization. The organic material in the tooth is replaced molecule by molecule with minerals from the surrounding groundwater. A megalodon tooth is, therefore, a collaboration between the biology of the shark and the geology of the burial site, a unique gemstone forged by the specific chemistry of the river or bay where it came to rest. The concept of shifting baselines applies tragically to our understanding of shark size. Today, a 20-foot great white is headline news, a monster. In the Miocene, a 20-foot shark would have been a juvenile, a mid-tier predator that had to hide in the mangroves to avoid being eaten. The baseline for what constitutes a giant has shrunk. The ocean we know is a miniaturized version of the past. We marvel at the orca and the white shark, not realizing they are the compact, fuel-efficient models that survived the downsizing of the planet's energy budget. The true giants burn too bright and too hot for the cooling world, leaving us with the smaller, scrappier survivors. The cultural impact of megalodon fossils on ancient humans is a fascinating, overlooked chapter of history. In the Mayan ruins of Mexico, archaeologists have found a votive offering cache containing a single, massive Megalodon tooth. It was placed there by the Maya as a sacred object, likely interpreted as a tooth from the gods or a sea monster from their creation myths. Similarly, the Algonquin people of North America used fossilized shark teeth as arrowheads and tools. Long before paleontologists named it, humans were finding these remnants and recognizing the power they represented. The Megalodon has been haunting the human imagination for thousands of years. A dragon that existed in the stone long before we knew it had ever lived in the water. The final generation of megalodons would have faced a lonely, desperate world. As the populations fragmented and the whales migrated away, the remaining sharks would have been forced into cannibalism to survive. Fossil evidence shows megalodon teeth with bite marks from other megalodons. While sharks often bite each other during mating, these marks on the teeth suggest predation or violent competition for food. It paints a grim picture of the end times. Massive, starving predators turning on each other in the last remaining warm bays, consuming their own kind as the world cooled around them. A fratricidal end to a dynasty that had stood united by abundance for 20 million years. The oxygen levels of the Miocene Ocean were likely slightly lower than today, yet the Megalodon thrived. This challenges the idea that high oxygen is necessary for giantism. Instead, it was the temperature that mattered. The warm water allowed the shark's enzymes to function at peak efficiency. As the water cooled, the chemical reactions that drove the shark's muscles and digestion slowed down. The Megalodon didn't suffocate, it slowed down. It became lethargic. A lethargic predator cannot catch a warm-blooded, migrating whale. The cold literally sapped the speed from the giant, freezing it out of the evolutionary race, leaving it as a slow-moving relic in a world that was speeding up. The phantom sensation of the Megalodon is the feeling divers get when looking into the deep blue, the primal fear that something huge is watching. This fear is likely an evolutionary leftover. For millions of years, our ancestors, primates and early hominids, lived on a planet where monsters were real. We learned to fear the deep water because, for most of history, the deep water did contain creatures that could swallow us whole. The Megalodon may be gone, but the fear it inspired is written into our DNA. When we shudder at the sight of a drop-off into the abyss, we are feeling the shadow of the Megalodon, a ghost that still swims in the deep recesses of the human amygdala. The legacy of the Megalodon is not just in its teeth, but in the whales that survived it. The speed of the fin whale, the size of the blue whale, the agility of the dolphin, and the social bonds of the sperm whale, these traits were forged in the fire of predation. They evolved to escape the Megalodon. Every time a humpback whale slaps its tail, or a pod of orcas coordinates a hunt, we are seeing behavior that was refined in a testing ground ruled by the giant shark. The Megalodon shaped the modern ocean by pruning the weak and forcing the strong to become stronger. It was the architect of the giants we see today, carving the biology of the sea with its serrated teeth. And finally, we arrive at the image of the very last Megalodon. It is a quiet thought. Somewhere in a tropical sea, perhaps off the coast of Brazil or Indonesia, roughly 3.6 million years ago, the last individual swam alone. It was likely old, its skin scarred from a century of battles, its teeth worn down. The water was colder than it had been when it was born. The whales were gone, migrated to the ice. It swam with the slow rhythmic beat of a tail that had once propelled the most powerful predator on Earth. There was no catastrophic explosion, no meteor impact. It simply slowed down. It drifted into the silence of the deep, a king without a kingdom. And eventually, it sank. Its body returned to the sediment. its teeth scattered in the sand to wait for us to find them. The ocean moved on, the waves continued to roll, and the silence of the extinction settled over the reef, leaving only the memory of the giant in the stone. As we drift away from the ancient, warm seas of the Miocene and return to the cool, quiet currents of the present, we leave the Megalodon to its eternal rest. It was a creature of a different time, a perfect monster for a golden age of the ocean. It reminds us that the Earth is always changing, and that even the giants are only temporary guests in the vast, blue history of the world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the time of the Titans, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. It helps this little submarine of curiosity find its way to other sleepy travelers. But for now, let the current carry you. Let the ancient waters fade. You are safe. You are drifting. Good night.